Welcome, everyone. This is Lucius Aurelian hosting Aurelian's Fair, the live stream event for the Restitutor Orbis Channel. It is great to see everybody. And let's go ahead and start with the hellos. Looks like we've got, and I'll go from the top here. Seeing Katie wants to go, and special thanks to Katie wants to go. Cynthia Burns, welcome. Polly Dibbs. Looks like we've also got Tabor J. Eaton. Welcome, Tabor. Oh, yeah, going back to Thunderdome, huh? OIC, welcome. A New World Over. Good to see ya. Who else? Jamie Griffin, good to see ya. Radioactive, Timothy Hoy. Crypto, thanks for the reminder. September 26th, good to see ya. Linda Vernon, welcome, good to see ya. Polly Dibbs, hello. Who else have we got? Does anybody else want to go ahead and say hello at this time? And go ahead and hit that like button as you're getting logged in. It is really good to see everybody, and glad that here in the States we got through the 4th of July week. It was a long week. Thanks, New World Over. I appreciate that. I don't know why it was a long week. It just seemed like it was a little strange for some particular reason. But regardless, glad to be on the far side of it, and glad that everybody's hopefully gotten home okay in the States. And wherever you are in the lands, you had a good week, and now you're happy to be to another weekend. So ready to go back with a live stream event. And good to see everybody here. This is going to be a little bit of a different live stream. We're still going to be looking at images, but I'm not going to be staying up with, laggy? Are we laggy? I wonder if there's something behind that. Let me see if I can do something on that. Okay. We laggy now, or does that seem to have cleared it up a little bit? Yeah, I was just doing a big download because I'm constantly working on videos here. Hey, Kathy Childers, welcome from Kentucky. Okay, no lag here. All right, just making sure. Okay, thanks, Jamie. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we got everybody. I travel a lot, so it could well be my feed, and it's never a point of contention for me. So you just let me know. Okay, well, it sounds good. All right. Well, in any event, as I was saying, we're going to do a little bit of a different exploration. Typically, we look at buildings, but we're going to look at something based on the exploration that we did because I thought that the one from this morning was very important. Hey, remember the future? Welcome. Thanks for that. And the reason it's important is we're going back and we're looking at theories from right after the last reset. Now, are there theories that there's many other resets that may have occurred after the 1850 time frame? Sure. But that's one of the hard time frames that we look at, and there's a lot of evidence with that. So let's go up and see if we get the screen share to work. Let me make sure I got the right one here. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up. Hey, my sister's voice. Welcome, good to see you here. All right, you probably all remember this slide from the video today if you got around to watching it, but let me know if you can see it. Crypto. All right, awesome. So what did you all think of looking? Hey, Chassis Nicks, good to see you. Careful now, if you start chasing numbers, it gets to be a little repetitive and a little redundant, and then you start seeing them all at the same time. Remember, we've only got so many numbers. No doubt about it. So what did you think of the whole reset war 1847 to 1870 concept? Were you aware of all these conflicts occurring across the land during this similar amount of time? Yeah, good one, Polly. And I'll just go ahead and share with you which one surprised me because, as you may or may not know, in my previous life, I was a university historian. And this is one that I really hadn't heard about too much. Oh, thanks, Jamie. I appreciate that. Thanks, New World Over. Appreciate that as well. Yeah, and it's okay to tell me if it doesn't make sense to you. I hope you know that. If something doesn't make sense or if it doesn't add up, that's perfectly okay. There's a lot of aspects of it I wasn't aware of either. So, we know there was conflict in the 19th century, but we get the impression, much like the city fires, that it occurred over a spread out amount of time, although the conflict is even more compressed, which I find quite interesting. And of course, we'll even see some of those aspects of that conflict tied into why we have destruction photos, such as all the cities in the South being destroyed. Although there's even some cities in the North that were destroyed as well. Hey, thanks, Crypto. I appreciate that. So in any event, One that surprised me the most is the Irish raids, and that's what I called them here on the picture, 1866 to 1871. I've got a lot of, hey, Jana Mackin, welcome. Good to see you. Appreciate that. I've got a lot of connections and understanding with historical studies of Ireland, Irish, and the immigration to the United States. It was actually an area I specialized in, and I had never heard of these raids that occurred from 1866 to 1871. Apparently, this was a group of people who supported Irish independence, the independence of Northern Ireland from the United Kingdom. And a lot of them were former Civil War veterans. Apparently, even the Louisiana Tiger Regiment went up and fought in this, and they raided Canada for 5 years. And the United States did virtually nothing to stop this. Canada had to stop this with their own militia, and apparently they did so effectively. Although this conflict is even more strange because there were only 37 killed, about 100 wounded, and then about 100 captured. I mean, when you look at the bloodbath that was the United States Civil War, and then you compare and contrast this that went on for 5 years, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah, the pikemen, that's a good one. And you can read about some of these battles, and apparently there's monuments in Canada that are dedicated to these battles. And that was actually the catalyst that caused me to really start thinking about these conflicts. Yeah, well, and Tabor, nothing against the Canadians. I mean, militarily, they've done a great job of defeating the United States Army. One of the worst disasters in United States military history was supposedly in the War of 1812 when they tried to invade Canada. They failed 3 times. Competent enough to defeat the British Army, but never able to conquer Canada or even take a small piece of it. I always found that fascinating. Yeah, exactly. And it happened all really quickly, too. So it's one of those things that comes out that makes you question the official account. Yep, and that is true as well, although sometimes we have to wonder who the victor really is. Was there really a victor, or is it just, we're pieces on a chessboard and we're being portrayed against each other? That's something I've always wondered. Yeah, that's a good call out there, Paulie. Good call out as well. But then looking down at some of the other conflicts, like I think it was one of the commenters that I looked at, very few Americans are taught about the filibustering of William Walker. And I didn't really get to that in the video too much. Now, filibustering was apparently a term they had for people that supported slavery in the southern United States, or at least where slavery was legal in the United States, according to the official account. And what this William Walker individual did was he decided to go down and conquer lands in Central America, specifically Nicaragua, and then they were going to make slavery legal there. Initially, he was successful and even had the support of the United States government, but then all of a sudden he ticked off a certain individual, and that turned out to be Cornelius Vanderbilt. And of course, if you know that name, that's probably not a good individual to tick off. Joe Santo, there's a castle call. Oh, nice one. That's good. Cornelius Vanderbilt's not a person to anger because he seized his business that involved transporting people across Nicaragua to get from the East Coast of the United States to the West Coast. Apparently, that's how they did it. So, although who knows, maybe there was a canal there or something. Anyway, whole point being, though, is that this Walker intervention was something that the United States didn't talk about a lot. And you'll never hear this in history, especially coming up. I guess it's something Americans aren't proud of, but it happened. It's still documented, so... Yes, that's an unfortunate reality. It's perhaps just in a different format now. Yeah, and there might be something to that, Paulie, going after the canals, and that's what that was really about. Yep. Yeah, if you've ever been to the university, and I'll have to do an exploration of that when I get down to Nashville, that should be something interesting. So, yes, you guys are catching on to me a little faster now. I guess this is what happens once we do enough of these. So I might have to vary up my tricks a little bit. That's okay. So anyway, moving on down to the southern portion now, down to South America. And I had another commenter reminded me there was a much larger conflict in Paraguay. And I did not mean to overlook any of the conflicts, because if you look at geographically where Paraguay is, yes, it's right in the middle of South America. And apparently there was a very large ongoing conflict there that lasted for several years. So, yep, you got it. Oh, yeah. Well, when you look at Encyclopedia Britannica OIC, you'll see all kinds of interesting information. So, well, and that's what a lot of people will say. But, people would think, okay, well, maybe one of the continents was peaceful during this time frame, but that's very much not the case. And then we go over to Oceania, Australia, and New Zealand, and they had their own conflicts going on with Aboriginal or Indigenous people. Yeah, and that's a good point, Paulie. And maybe there's just some areas they don't ever want peace in. Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate that. But the other aspect of it, and I think people were aware of this with Australia and New Zealand. This wasn't a surprise. It's just, yes, this is going on at the same time. But then when you come back to Africa, we're reminded of how colonialism was going on, or new imperialism, and that was just an ongoing effort that didn't really end until World War I, although you could argue if it's ended or if different people are doing it now. So in any event, that was interesting. But then the other aspect that we don't consider is the revolutions of 1848 and 1849. And that was a major social change. Oh, thanks for that, Daryl. I appreciate that. Yep. And caught that a little bit. I didn't really mention it in the video, Paulie, about the 1000 expedition. I know that wasn't affiliated with it, but just all this conflict going on at the same time. And you wonder, is this what we're told? Did this happen as we're told? Yeah. Well, and it's even depicted that way on the maps, New World over. So always something to remember. But back to what I was saying, when you look at these revolutions of 1848, 1849, this is supposedly massive social upheaval against the existing governments of Europe. And all of a sudden, these revolutions were initially successful. Then they failed when the monarchy got their acts together and put them down. But then historical accounts tell us that they imposed most of these reforms anyway. It's really strange. Yeah, exactly. At the same time, and not just an external conflict, but an internal and external conflict. Exactly, September 26th. That's a big And so it's one of those things that you just have to look at to try to see if you can get an answer. Now, another commenter talked about the Caucasian War in Russia, and keep in mind, Russia was already involved in that, or so we're told, all the way back to 1817, although who knows the veracity of that. And then the Crimean War at the same time. Good question. That's a good one. Are you referring to the board game there, Tabor? You let me know. That used to be one of my favorites way back in the day. Although, granted, it depended more on your dice rolling capability, like so many other things. A little bit of luck. Well, that is something that comes out there, Paul. You're right. But in any event, and then you go from there and you looked at the conflicts that are going on in Asia, and okay, good to know, Tabor. Yeah, it was one of my favorite games. It's like you already knew. I think you guys are starting to figure me out a little bit here. Hey, Slowburn, welcome. Good to see you. Well, there may have been a flood. There may have been something else that happened. And, there's a reason why I always talk about not being sure of what the dates or the years are. We just don't know. It's a lot of speculation. I mean, I don't know that it was really 1850 and all these time frames that we look at. I'm just trying to put together some theories and see if it all makes sense of what we're told. Oh, yes, there's a lot of interesting aspects in Russia. Welcome, Mike Matinee. Okay, well, feel free to chime in anytime you want to. Well, we have to choose who we trust and who we don't. Well, and that's another good one. And there's a lot of connections from the Opium Wars that continue to this day. Well, radioactive, think about it. I mean, they could tell people anything they want to. And, when you have more authoritarianism that you can rely on, how difficult is it to get people to believe things, especially when people only have one single source of information that we're told that they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they had other communications methods that we don't understand. I always found it interesting how in the historical account in the United States, they say that everybody knew about the John Brown raid down on the Harper's Ferry Armory in Virginia, because they said that everybody was going to the post office, obviously the big, well-constructed post offices we see, right, to get the latest news via telegraph about what was going on in the John Brown raid. Like, really? Really? I don't know. It just never made a lot of sense to me. So, yep. And that's what it really boils down to. But in any event, Before I go too far onto that, in any event, there's also a significant amount of conflict in China, and I think a significant underreporting of casualties, or maybe an overreporting of casualties. I mean, we just don't know. So, well, it would have made sense, Linda. Maybe that's how they filled them, and that's how they justified building them so nice and so large. I'm not sure, but it is a recurring theme, and you'll get to see another one in the next city exploration. We got one coming up right around the corner. So in any event, you go and you look at all these conflicts, and then you wonder, well, was this really regional conflict? Were all these nations fighting each other in some way, or was there something else going on? And one of the telltale signs for me was looking at all the pictures of United States Army Civil War officers who were all apparently intimately involved in this revolution of 1948. And why was that the case? You look up Franz Siegel. He played a role in several major Civil War battles, including one of the supposed first Union victories in the West, the Battle of Pea Ridge. He was supposedly instrumental in that, and then he was utterly incompetent. So I don't know what to tell you. Hey, Cruising Gal, good to see you. Yeah, exactly. It seems more like an international foreign expeditionary war, doesn't it? But we'll just call it a civil war. Yeah, good call out there, Jamie. Well, and I think that's what it boiled down to is, if you just take this all at face value and you don't notice that people are wearing the same uniforms or they're acting in the same way. So I don't know. Martha, welcome. Good to see you. Thanks for that fact-checking history. That's always a good one. History. I'll just say history because it means the same thing. All right, we'll move on to the next one. But then how they lay out these casualties, and this is always something that's interesting, is when you try to look at casualties. I mean, just from a single conflict alone, yeah, it could be. I mean, we just don't know. For all we know, they could have just had these people thinking they were on different sides, and maybe they just thought they really were fighting for something legitimate, or maybe they were told something completely different. I think they may have believed that, but then what was really going on behind the scenes was very different. I mean, who knows? We just don't know. But I always found the casualty counts interesting because they want us to think, okay, this is the Napoleonic conflict at the start of the 19th century, and this was the most terrifying conflict. This was the world war of its day. But they don't even factor in, it seems, the rebellion in China where you've got 20 to 30 million dead, which would take you way off the top of this chart. It seems as though they try to spread it out. And of course, this is from Our World in Data, which is an interesting site to look at. Data. One's my name, the other is not. Anyways. But I find it intriguing that who knows what the actual casualty count was. So. And that's a good point too, Chassis. We don't know on that count as well. We get some accounts that they did fight back, other accounts that they didn't. It just depends on what you're looking at. No, they probably haven't. Hey, Captain Flatastic, good to see you again. Yeah, so they say. Nagagoto? No, I have not. I'm going to have to check that out. And that's another good point. We used to argue about that back when I was in the history department. And he supposedly invaded Russia with 600,000 soldiers. And, there was no logistics issues with that whatsoever. All right, on to the next one. But then also going back to what they said was a major climate, got to watch when I say the word here, temperature change, because there was a climate shift. I think I can say that. Got to be careful what I say here. In 1850. So who knows with that? Technocracy, yeah, true enough. It could be a misinterpretation. Oh, I see. I mean, we've seen photos of empty and cities that didn't really have anything going on. So, yep, it's a good one, OWE. That's a very good point. Oh, yeah. Well, and then they also claim that Napoleon's army sustained themselves by doing foraging. In other words, they just lived off the land. Right. Okay. course, then, you read the accounts of World War II where the Wehrmacht was invading the Soviet Union, and their commanders are constantly complaining about the fact they didn't have enough roads to sustain their soldiers, let alone railroads. That's in the 1940s. But yeah, I'm sure it was a lot easier when they did it in the early 19th century, right? Anyways, it's just another one of those things that comes up that you have to ask questions about. You'll see images and pictures like this, although you only get paintings, and so what's that really tell you? It doesn't really prove anything. So well, possibly Jana, or I think there's a little bit of reality to it, and then they just twist it all up. So we're not sure. We just don't know. Yep, good one there, Tabor. Twigs and berries. And that's something that we wonder on. Anyway, enough of these paintings. Then you have these random constructions that are just out in the middle of nowhere. I think this was one in Scotland. But the reason I am intrigued by buildings like this is, what's this really from? Is this wreckage, or is this debris from something? Was this subjected to some kind of great force? And you can find this anywhere you go, these kind of pictures and these kind of buildings. That's what's intriguing about it. And of course, you'll be told, well, it's an old house from such and such. So yeah, and that's something I wonder, Chassis. We always ask that questions. I got in a lot of trouble in the history department for even suggesting that idea, but that's okay. I turned out okay. So we'll go on to the next one here. Now, just looking at these were photos that I looked at in an earlier exploration, but I found it even more comical. Yes, I say the word comical loosely. Looking at them when we consider that this is supposed to be Maryland in 1856, when all this conflict is going on. Yeah, that's a good point, Linda. When all this conflict is going on and all these issues, all this internal and external conflict, keep in mind the United States was being torn apart even though the Civil War hadn't started at this time. And yet, look how beautiful and modern Baltimore looks in 1856. Of course, you might find a slightly different reputation if you look into Baltimore these days. Yes, indeed. Well, and it could be. Yeah, that's a good call out there, Paulie. That is a very peculiar outfit too, isn't it? But it's just one of those things that causes you to ask questions. And then you look at Paris. Yeah, Ian Holm probably did the best interpretation of Napoleon, to be honest with you. Although Ian Holm can really do anything. He can play a hobbit. He can play a synthetic from Alien. You know it. He's got it. Yeah. And that's the funny thing about it, isn't it, Jamie? How it looks almost sanitized. Yep. And I'm pretty sure he was. And that's one of those photos that kind of bucks what we're told about things. Now, of course, we've got our narrative and we'll be told what his function and role was in society. But you see pictures like that kind of make you ask questions quite a bit. And that's what I say myself, September 26th. That's what it all boils down to. Yep, and nobody sees those streets better than you do, my friend. Nobody sees those streets better than you do. All right. Now, this was the Great Eastern, under construction in London's Millwall Ironworks, supposedly in 1857. Yeah, maybe that's the best explanation right there. Of course, this was the largest ship at the time, and I don't think it ended up going Titanic on us, but still, quite an interesting picture. And how you just have people laboring away, or supposedly laboring away, although it just looks like everybody's standing around. I always love the top hats, though. Yep. And that's a good call out there, Chassis. And another good point there, Linda. Don't know. Couldn't tell you. Maybe somebody else did. It looks like it's kind of old. I had a funny comment when I get to one of the battle photos. Oh, that's an interesting comment there, Perfect Storm, and welcome. And in case you haven't done so, please hit that like button. I appreciate it. Oh, yes. Aren't they always? Well, of course you do. You need to have your top hat. Where would you be without it? Well, that may well be the case. It may not be. Maybe they do, or maybe they're given false information as well, Scott. It's hard to say. That's something we're also going to consider as part of our explorations. I haven't really touched it yet, but we are going to get there, so. Probably true. Advanced special effects most certainly are. And I alluded to that in a much earlier video, and I think I got into a little bit of friction for it, so I had to walk my way out of it a little bit, if you know what I mean. Anyways, okay, enough of the Great Eastern. Let's go to the next one. I just love these wonderful viaducts that they could build in the 1860s. Just a gorgeous one here in France. No, they don't say the Romans built this one, surprisingly enough. It'll take them a couple years to build this one, because you could build things really quick back then. Running Man. Yep. And, and that's the other thing is if they can do that with effects, images, and video. Yeah, you do, Jovalachi? Welcome. Yeah, it's still standing there today. Apparently they run trains right over it, so very well constructed. Thanks, James. Good to see you. Hope things are going well over there on the other side of the Atlantic or the pond or whatever we want to call it. Yeah, no doubt. All right, enough of the viaduct. And of course, looking back at Paris in 1856, and of course, you see how beautiful Notre Dame allegedly was then. But I also love how built out the city is, and we got our fairy tale towers here. That may be true. And it's a little disturbing to think of that. Yeah, I need to get back over to Europe and actually check some of those sites, and I'm looking forward to that to really see. And that's something that I pay attention for now is what materials they use and try to get an idea. It's one of the things that really shook me about the Iowa State Capitol exploration was just confirming that there really were 27 different types of marble inside that building. They weren't joking about that. That was not an exaggeration. And then I wondered who in the heck actually worked on that marble and shaped it that way. So, well, of course, old world, because you got all this space, Yeah, it's interesting on that one, isn't it? What's that, S. Lee? Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, I think that takes care of those, but I've got some other images that I wanted to show you. So hold on, let me get the screen shared. Don't worry, we're not close to done yet. Okay, so this is from the Crimean War. And these are some interesting pictures because, the Crimean War is not quite as well known as the United States Civil War, but it's still pretty well known. There were several movies made about it. And one of the historical accounts that goes along with it was there was a lot of struggle on the part of the British because they hadn't had any actual experience since the Napoleonic Wars. And this is the first time they were doing any kind of expedition. And they do admit to logistical struggles. Of course, when you look at something like this, you can kind of see why there would be logistical struggles. This doesn't exactly look very well organized for some sort of expeditionary force. It's just bizarre. The photo itself is bizarre. Yeah, well, you quote that, and to me, that's the last movie, and that's never mind. I'm not going to go down that road either. I'll get myself in trouble. So this is actually from the supposed opium conflict somewhere in China. Couldn't get an exact location. I guess you can say maybe they dressed it up to look like China, but you got a brick building here, but then you've got something you'd expect to see there. Got a cannon. Cannon's facing 90-degree opposite directions. So how does that really make sense? I'm not sure, but it's all good. And look at the road as well. China's had civilization for thousands of years. Mainstream account says that. So is it really that surprising there? Yes and no. But in any event, let's go to the next one. This is one of my favorite ones. Now, this is just a random building in the Crimea, according to the account, and it looks like someone just stuck a cross on top of a pyramid. So, well, Well, you can always find plenty of those, and I'm sure they'd be 2-month construction star forts if we had the actual count. So, no, thanks. I appreciate that very much. And welcome, OG Scotty Skid Row Interviews. Good to see you. Yeah, that's a good call out there, Cynthia. And you can actually see a little bit of cloud in this if you consider this cloud. So, yeah, I think so, Jamie. I think that's a good call that you're just seeing the very top of it. So who knows? Is it a larger pyramid like many of the other pyramids we see, or is it just the capstone to some tremendous skyscraper that's all buried? Don't know. I wonder if this one's still standing. I don't know. And then another one of these interesting expeditionary photos with wondrous military organization there. Yeah, obelisk. That's a good call out there, Perfect Storm. And that might well be what it is. It's just a giant obelisk that's buried because you see plenty of those over in that area. So, but this is another interesting one because here you see some of the blurriness that supposedly happens on these photos. So that might be a lot of it. I also like how this one's ruined over here. You can see it's cracked up a little bit. So it's almost like they're trying to give this one a go at seeming a little bit more legitimate. But again, everybody wearing their interesting hats and, maybe there's some sort of logistical operation going on. I mean, you've got train tracks right here. What exactly is going on? Strange to see. And then, of course, we got everybody hanging out because that's what soldiers did in the 19th century. You dressed really nice and you hung out a lot. I mean, what an awesome uniform. Looks like you ought to be in the marching band almost. And, I'm not picking on the British or the French or anybody else. You'll see the United States Civil War and Americans dressed up in the same odd array of uniforms. Yet there's strange similarities with the chevrons and everything else. Oh, yes. So, yep, and that's right, Martha. Pose for the pictures. Now, this was one that I had an interesting comment on. Someone tried to tell me that I was silly for questioning why the cannonballs were starting to rust. It wasn't so obvious in this picture, but one of the other pictures, I think I've got it, where they piled the cannonballs like this and they look like they're in poor condition. Somebody told me, well, you're silly for asking that question about that because that's what's going to happen to cannonballs. Yes. Yeah, they sure do, don't they, OWE? Anyway, yeah, exactly. On the note of that, the whole thing about it, though, is militaries always have to take good care of their weapons and their equipment, and certainly their ammunition back then. And you would think that would be doubly true for cannons, or they just let it lay around and rust because that's how you know it's going to fire, right? Yeah, that was another point. Good call out there, Perfect Storm. So yeah, I guess you're silly for asking that question too. No, I don't think any question is silly, even if it's something that you think is a fact. It's hard to tell. Ryan Oper, good to see you. Welcome. Through My Lens, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So in any event, I mean, that's everything that you see with that, and it just raises more questions. I also like this structure here. This is pretty well built out. We told this is a fort or something. All during the Crimean War. My thoughts exactly through my lens. Yeah, maybe they did, Jamie. Thanks, Crypto. I appreciate that. High praise coming from the stream master himself. Then you know what? There might be some truth to that, Funky Gal. Photo op or some manipulation, or maybe both. We just don't know. Now, here's where you get this concept of trench warfare that was supposedly going on with the Crimean War. Although, they'd call this a redoubt at the time. And again, you've always got cannons facing 90-degree opposite directions, which to me is very strange. Yeah, it does kind of look like San Quentin, didn't it, Linda? Hey, maybe they did. Wouldn't want to shoot that out of my cannon, though. But, maybe you just weren't worried that the cannon was going to explode. I think she was referring to this one. Kind of does look like San Quentin. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, and if you've actually go into a conflict and you watch it, you'll see what exactly it's about. And a lot of it's just a lot of waiting. And that's what soldiers do, regardless of what nation they're from. They wait around. And Well, and my theory on it, Ryan, is the orphans were the survivors of many of the families that they wiped out in the settlements that they were attacking. Good question. Good question, Cynthia. Yep, it does look like the desert. You'll see both. You'll see none. You'll see all kinds of terrain. I like how we see the desert in the southern United States in some of the Civil War photos, too. And then I'll be told, well, did you know that there's these great droughts that occur in the South? Yeah, I might have resided in the southern United States for a number of years, but no, I never witnessed that. But, you know. Good one, Scott. Good one. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, yeah. So here we go. This is with the really suspicious looking cannonballs. And then just look at what a mess this is. One thing I can assure you about militaries is they're very neat and orderly because that's usually how they keep busy. And when they're just standing around waiting for something to do, they tend not to just let their equipment hang around like this in this kind of state. Well, and that's what it boils down to. So, yeah, exactly. Covered in debris. Good to see you. Welcome, Isabella. Thanks for joining us. And I don't think this is the photo they were commenting about, but yeah, exactly. Definitely doesn't look like it's secure. You know, and you think about how strategically important this would be to the expeditionary force that they would want to secure this. This is called a sea port of debarkation or an S-pod. Yeah. Thank you for that very much, Isabella Live. I appreciate that. Yeah, 90 degrees on the ships. Ain't that the truth? What exactly is going on there? It's just like the cannons. They've always got them going every direction. Well, that's what it all boils down to. Now, this is an interesting one because this was a bit of a photo that mixed what seems to be a real photo, but then it looks like we have drawn in soldiers here because, you know, just like you won't see actual combat photos from the US Civil War, you're not going to see actual combat photos from the Crimean War. I mean, why would you? Who would want to see a combat photo? Combat photographer did not come out there to take pictures of combat. Bodies, yes. Destruction and death, yes. But combat, no, that's boring. Who'd want to see that? You know, you just have to wonder during the Civil War when they had the balloons that went up there, why that, yeah, combat painter, that's a good one. Yep, and you're exactly on it. Alexa, create photos of world wars. And I don't wonder if somebody said that at some point in time, and that's what they did. These comments are gold. Maybe, Cynthia. And just, you know, we're going to try to Photoshop it by just painting them on there. See, look how convincing that is. Yeah, it's like you have a marching formation here, and then you've got an artillery crew here. Everybody's looking in different directions. But hey, it's trench warfare. I'm not sure. What direction are we shooting? Got some smoke. It looks very convincing. Well, that's what they suggest, Jana, that Matthew Brady did stage his photos, and several other photographers did. They only had the best ones in the 1850s chassis. And that's kind of what it boils down to. So they're just shooting at the land, Linda. They got a report that there were some Russians moving on them that they started to start shooting because, you know, that's what you do back then. That is a very good point through my lens, and that's something we have to remember with any photograph from any era and any time associated with it. And there's a reason why I'm always dubious whenever I'm looking at anything, even if it's a really great photo. In fact, if it's an even better photo, I really question it now. So you got it there, Jamie. No, but they'd expect you to believe one did. Did any of you remember the U.S. Civil War movie Glory with Matthew Broderick from the late 1980s? It was the movie that depicted the integration of African Americans in the United States Army. Anybody see that? Remember that movie? Yeah, hey, Hunzi. No, that is a Crimean War photo from 1853 to 1856. So Okay, yep. It's a very well made movie and it's a good story. Yeah, that was one of Denzel's early roles. But in any event, the reason I'm referring to the movie is not to talk about how good or bad it is, but I remember one of the opening scenes, and I'm thinking it was the Battle of Antietam. And you've got Matthew Broderick out there walking in front of his formation. He's got his sword out, and they're just walking as the Confederates are mowing them down with rifled musket fire and cannon fire. You see the guy's head just blow up. And he just walks on there, da 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 da. Yep. I don't know. I just always thought about that. So, well, maybe. Who knows? We just don't know. Yep, that was another good scene in that movie. So, but in any event, so that's the end of the photos we're actually looking at. But reason I brought up glory, though, is there's just a lot of cultural aspects that still tie to the United States Civil War, and it's done through many different variations. Although most people in the United States who grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s always remember Ken Burns' Civil War documentary. And what was that thing? 11, 12 hours long? I don't know. I watched it enough times. Maybe I'm just blanking it from my memory, but what was it? 10 episodes? It seemed like it. In any event, just all these slow pans on these old photos and then having these Hollywood stars read these supposed journals. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what they say. And then everyone will say they were so brave and they were just willing and able to do that. So, well, his first documentary, Cynthia, was Brooklyn Bridge, ironically enough, which has a lot of questionable aspects to it. Brooklyn Bridge itself, I don't know, make of the documentary what you will. And then, of course, he did that, the other documentary on the famous Louisiana politician whose name is jumping out of my mind right now. The guy who was governor of Louisiana in the 30s. Was it Huey Long? I think it was Huey Long. Why is my memory drawing a blank? See, I've had a long week. But anyway, he featured Ashokan Farewell, that Civil War theme that he played it in that too. Well, Ashokan Farewell came from the 1980s. It was not composed from the 1860s or the 1930s. Operation London Bridge. Oh, you crack me up. You always crack me up. Yeah, because there wasn't anything suspicious about moving that sucker over to Arizona, was it? No, that makes perfect sense. So, well, that's what we don't know, Hunzi. And the whole point of looking at all those conflicts today was wondering what was it exactly? Were they targeting a specific region or were they targeting many different areas? So, again, something else we just don't know. And that's what it boils down to. So, well, thank you, New World Order, or New World Over. I appreciate that. So, all right. Well, finished up the photos a little early, but I'm going to open it up to question and answer. We're going to start a new video section here on the channel. We're going to be doing a little bit of biography. We're going to start with one of our most famous inventors in the United States, although many people tell us this individual was very suppressed, Nikola Tesla. Probably going to feature those on Mondays, and then I'm likely going to move movie reviews to Friday. I think that's a better day to do movie reviews on. And then we'll do other explorations in between. We'll see how that goes. So I appreciate that, Paulie. No problem. Happy to do so. Slam Tana, yeah, there's actually a lot of the southern cities that have that appearance to them, especially when you go to New Orleans and you look down there and see how built out that was. So, oh, don't worry, I'll get to that. Although who knows if there's an actual connection to it or not, but yeah, I'll be mentioning everything. So, oh, let's see, Kathy, how did I get interested in it? Would you believe to know that it all started when I was grading a thesis paper on Charlemagne, Charles the Great, the Carolingian Empire, or the Carolingian Emperor, the first emperor of the so-called Holy Roman Empire. And when I was reading the paper, I actually did my own thesis paper about it when I was a student. And it caused me to question things because I was wondering, how exactly do we know that this Charlemagne guy even existed? And how exactly do we know that he knew or we knew what he was thinking 1,000 years before I was writing or grading the paper? That's what started it all. Then I started seeing things, and it took a couple years. It didn't happen all at once, and I'm not going to tell you exactly when this was, but it took a couple years, and then I started seeing more and more and more. And I'd always had a different bit of a mindset when it come to that. I remember having arguments with, yeah, there you go, good one, Tabor. I'd always had a different mindset with that. So, well, and that's what I'm going to look at New World Over. We're going to see the different perceptions of Tesla. And of course, I'll leave it to you all. But, some people think, he's a great inventor. Other people think he was just another individual to keep records. Maybe he was something in between. We just don't know. But it's going to be fun finding out. So, yes, Charlemagne. Oh, yeah, there's no shortage of individuals to cover. That's for sure. We've got plenty. And by all means, send the recommendations in the comments too, and I'll relook at the chat section. Although I think I've got a pretty solid list I want to start with. There's a really good reason to start with Tesla. Yeah, isn't that the truth? Rediscovered it, or he was the person designated to re-release it, or maybe something in between. Maybe they did have to do some reverse engineering. A couple different aspects to look at. So, is there any such thing as free energy, or is it just a pipe dream that we're given? Oh, yeah. Well, when I get over to Europe, that's on the top list of things to cover is the Palace of Parliament in Romania. You know what? They've got a church they're building right next to that thing that looks like what they call derisively a god mall. When you look at that church that they're building and you see how it just doesn't compare to all the old famous cathedrals of Europe, it's quite telling. I'll be sure to cover that one. So, yeah, that's a good point. I need to do some more research on that before I voice any opinion on Valiant Thor. My pleasure. I greatly appreciate that. So, yeah, and that's probably what it all boiled down to. You need the right person who can garner trust and is somebody that people look up to. So, it usually boils down to that. What do you all think of the way the city explorations are going so far? How does everybody feel about city explorations? I was a little curious on that one after the July 4th break. I'll get to that one, Paulie. I'll get to that one. It is one of those anomalies, that's for sure. And that's probably a separate exploration there. Yep. Okay, so everybody likes the city explorations, it looks like. All right. Yeah, I think those are probably, and I'm not going too far down. You can see the numbers as easily as I do. Those are the most popular ones. So I try not to step on Old World Exploration's toes, though, because I think he does those a little bit better than I do. He's got a little bit more detail that he goes into, and he really gets at the heart of it. He's also been doing it longer than I have, but no, he's a great explorer. Yeah, and Indianapolis is one that you can just drive right by because the way the interstates run now, you can just zoom right through Indianapolis, regardless of which direction you're coming from, and not even notice this. About the only thing that stands out to you is all the interstates still lead to Indianapolis. So, oh, Vancouver's got a lot to it as well. Don't you worry. Now, when you ask that, Linda, what are you asking me? How long have I been doing the videos, or how long have I been into this kind of exploration, or how long has my mind worked this way when I've considered these different narratives? So, yes, of course, you can suggest towns and states. Just beware, I've got a long list. Of course, if you want to move up on that list, there is a way to do that now. You can become a member and you can request that. Not that I'm plugging that here in the live stream, but that's a way if you want to get exploration. So, and you can even get specific structure explorations too. So, yeah, yep. All right. So anyway, back to where I was doing. Let's see here. Yes, you can suggest it though. I'll just add it to the list, and eventually I'll get around to it. So. I know. Shameless plug. It's okay. You can just call me out for it. You can add a comment too. What are you doing? What are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that. Oh, yes, Balboa, San Diego. That is a very unique area, and you know what? I was there pretty recently. In fact, that would be pretty easy. Let's see here. Well, I would tell you I would love to go to the outer edges of the lands because I haven't been there. But I've pretty much been everywhere else. I'd probably like to get back to Southeast Asia a little bit because there's lots of beautiful spots to explore there. India, got to the Middle East, so. Let's not talk about that, okay? Japan is very interesting, and you find a lot of anomalies in Japan, Paulie. You really do. You know what? I think I might kick up San Diego, though, especially Balboa, on the precedence list because I think that's something that desires a look. I did a video on it, Cynthia, where I speculated on it, although getting out there, I don't know. If anybody's got an airship, let me know. All right. So here's a question. I'm going to keep doing the movie reviews. I know there's a hardcore audience for it. I know it's getting to be a smaller audience as the channel grows, but I'm going to look to move movie reviews to Friday. And we'll finish up the Mad Max trilogy because there's a great ending to that story. And then we're probably going to go on. I know I'm going to cover V, and I know Adam Baum couldn't be with us, but V really ties into a lot of the stuff we're talking about. And it actually ties into an event that just happened mainstream here about a day or so ago. You may have seen it on Twitter if you follow that kind of thing. I only follow it for the channel. I prefer to talk to you all and, get my news from people who think for themselves. But that's just me. What you decide to do, that's all on you. So Fitbit's very interesting, Paulie. Yeah, Fitbit's very interesting. And some of the things you get from that, hard to say. Or were they intentional leaks? I always question anything about that. I'm glad to see there's some enthusiasm about it. So V, it was a mini series from 1983, and then it became a TV show. It's about aliens that are humans that are really lizard people, if you follow me. Also, something to note about V is it's when I had my first personal Mandela effect. So I'll be sure to mention that in that review for those of you that watch it. So yeah, that's a good name for a dog. Take to the sky. Well, what about parasites? Parasites across the land, or the parasites inside of us, or both? Because there could be both. Watch out. Between us and everybody on the channel, I worry about the parasites that actually get within inside us. And one of the things about the Mad Max story that I like is that's really a talk about how we face internal conflicts. Something that you see in references to the old world and people is how it's much more about internal conflicts. But it's one of the reasons why I like the Mad Max story so much. I've often believed that the internal conflicts are something we need to be more concerned about. I don't really think there's anything externally that can threaten us. Yes, we're made to believe that, but again, just my belief. So, oh yeah, well, they've always got to push that one. It's funny. Then those skeptic people, then they won't attack UFO encounters, but they will attack other aspects of it. Just because they do. So, do I or did I? It'll come up. Don't worry. Yeah, exactly. And I think there could be something to be said for that through my lens. And that's something else to be aware of. Yep. And don't worry, we'll give Tina Turner the due respect that she deserves because, frankly, I'm kind of surprised she didn't jump into major stardom acting in many movies because she just completely knocked that role out of the park in my humble opinion. Not to give any preview to it, so. I've got to get to Canada. I've got a couple cities on the list, so. Montreal, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto. Notice I didn't say the T. Did I get that right? Did I get that right? Well, there you go. Good channel plug there. And one thing I'll always tell y'all is at the end of the day, think for yourselves, decide what works best for yourself. I'm not here trying to shepherd you all in a particular direction. I'm just trying to present you some alternate points of view and some alternate thought processes. But ultimately, I respect the individual's desire to choose what they want and who they want to be in life. And that's one of the reasons why every video ends the same way with the same reminder. So, the Calgary Stampede, no doubt about it. Yep, I think Montreal is first up on my Canadian list there, Isabella. So we shall see. Well, Scott, my theory is it's the same civilization that preceded ours. I may be wrong, but you see it all over the place. And you go into every small town across Midwestern United States, even if it's a town of 2,000, 3,000 people, and that's exactly what you see, electric train cars. Why did they need an electric train car in a town of 7,000 people in Wisconsin? So, well, I need to make my way down there, I've always wanted to reenact some scenes from Mad Max, but I don't know if they let me bring my car. It's, the wrong drive version. Exactly, through my lens. Exactly. So in any event. All right. Well, does anybody have any other questions or things they would like to highlight in observation? Yeah, they even claim that the towers on top of the city hall in Milwaukee are Steins, even though they got the exact same thing on the state capitol. So I guess those are Steins too. And again, I'm not insulting the good people of Wisconsin. There's some great people in Wisconsin. Yeah, they say they've got the baseline to the Tower of Babel up there too. I wonder what remains of it. Might be something more to that theory. We shall see. Well, you might have to do your Tina Turner impressions for me someday, Isabella. Would like to hear them. Yeah, I love the way she says that line. She really nails it too. Wasu. Whoa. Oh, it's been a while through my lens. It's been a while. I'll have to look into it. No, to be honest, I've only driven past it fast. Well, I'm glad, Cruising Gal. I hope that continues. So I appreciate that very much. So, Dwayne, good to see you. Hope everything's going well. Well, good to see you, Cynthia. Take care. Thanks for joining us. So, welcome, Raven Fox. Thank you very much. All right. Well, one final thing I'm going to do, if anybody doesn't have any more questions or comments, is just assure you that one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to make this live stream something that you have to pay to be a part of. This is going to continue to be just a regular part of the channel. And the reason for that is I think it's important to gain all your feedback. If you're willing to commit the time to be here, then I think you deserve to have a say in how the channel goes forward. So this will always continue to be a free event that only costs your time. And I really appreciate your feedback. I appreciate your comments. And it's just very inspiring to see what wondrous, intelligent, thoughtful people that are still out there. So just go by Lucius. That's good enough for me, Linda. Just go by Lucius. Good one, Tabor. Good one. All right, Polly. Well, that's completely up to you. I don't know if I'm going to go that route, though. So I think just being a member on the channel, if that's what you want to do, but that's entirely up to you. So, okay. What do you mean? What's with the logo? I've covered that before and what it stands for. It's come up in a couple different videos. So, It's okay, T-Fetch. We do this every week, so no worries. Yep. Okay, well, I talk about the logo in one of the other videos, but the logo just represents one of the old sun religions that was supposedly a unifying religion, and I think there may have been something to it, but it's really just a reference to it. And it comes back to the time when it was supposedly the religion that had a bit of a unifying effect. So I find inspiration in that. May not have even existed, but that's where the sun logo comes from. It doesn't have anything to do with the star of Ishtar or anything like that. And I know John Levi's got his own logo that came from his mind, and I've heard his story about it. And, this is just the one that came from my inspirations and my experiences. So, but no, it wasn't something that I was inspired by something else or anything like that. So, but in any event. All right. Well, I appreciate that through my lens. Well, I think that's it, everybody. And that's what I will continue to try to do, Raven Fox. And that's really what it's about, trying to shine light in areas that there aren't. So, yep, that was my theory at the end, T-Fetch. Orphan children of these wars. So, no worries. Just ask the question. So, haven't gotten to it yet, Scott. I haven't gotten to it yet. It's on my list of things to do, and that list grows every day, but it's actually towards the top because I think there's something interesting there. So that's right, Jamie. It's from Ninja Gaiden, Nintendo Entertainment System. Ever play that one? Yeah, so they say, but I really wonder if they are. I think there's a lot of usefulness in keeping people divided. And one of the best ways to keep people divided is to make them think that you're trying to unify them. But maybe I'm just thinking too far. So next week, same time, Saturday. And I'll have it up shortly. So it's now 8 p.m. Eastern time and midnight Greenwich Median time for the live streams every Saturday. So yeah, good call out there, Paulie. And I think there might be something to that evil organization that existed in that game. But we'll cover that when the time comes. Yep, and that's the real goal there through my lens, because there's been a war on it for quite some time. Heck, it started when I was still at the university system. So, all right, everybody. Well, I hope you have a great night and enjoy the rest of your weekend or wherever you are. And be sure to leave any comments if you have anything else you want me to look into. Other than that, everybody enjoy. There will be a video posted tomorrow morning, and surprise, it's a city exploration. And then the biography with everyone's favorite inventor will start on Monday, usual release times. So just so you all know, you heard it from me and you heard it here first. All right. Have a good night. Have a great weekend. As always, explore yourself, ask questions, and you'll restore the world. Thanks for coming.